Hello? Oh, God. What's up, Diggy boy? We're going to be talking about guns tonight, you know, for the billionth time. But the dude who was DMing me seems pretty cool. Good. Nihilist Anonymous, I'm happy that you were shooting holes in your roof right now in anger that is based and red pilled. I fucking love it. And then I want to fucking kvetch. I want to complain, but I'm gonna save it for a little bit. Maybe my cantankerousness will help me in the debate. We'll see. I'm actually on vacation for the next week and a half, so we're going to be working on some content. I know that the live streams have been going up regularly ish, still getting live once or twice a week, but I do know that the actual pre recorded content has been off for 3 weeks. Taze was super busy at work, and I got him some really good content. I got him the Age of Sigmar Hammer and Bolter. I'm going to get him the Interrogator episodes, and then I got him a Uvalde essay. But just because of his work and because of the amount of editing we're doing on the back end, it did get delayed. So I am sorry for the pre-recorded content being a little slow, but c'est la vie. Also, I'll try to reorganize once we get up and running. So in this week and a half, I'll be taking some of the time during the week and a half in order to reorganize the playlist, reorganize the YouTube, reorganize everything in order to try to get everything up to snuff. And then I'm actually going to post my second channel in the chat now, just in case people are looking for this. This is the second channel where we're uploading all of the conversations and debates. So there's a second channel. And it's just a place where we can put all the one-on-one conversations and debates. So y'all can check out the archive so we can algorithmically promote the primary channel without hurting it with the debates. But I still enjoy debates. Like Australia. Like a country, except it's bad. If I had my way, leftists wouldn't have any guns at all. Aw, Jeb. Oh, you know for sure that have guns. Yes, everyone. To keep the government in line and appears this money that's really preventing adequate gun laws. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Anecdote the Based, for checking out all the old stuff. And then Punchy, well, I'm sure we'll get into it. So we'll have Leader on in a second. And we'll be arguing probably from... probably arguing from a utilitarian study or utilitarian framework, like, are guns sufficiently good against the horrors of the government and the horrors of our history in order to protect against that, or no? And then using Europe as an example, but Europe still has plenty of fucked up shit about its recent and distant past. And also from a historical analysis, a century is almost nothing. And considering we're seeing all of the crazy shit that's going on right now, is this the time to really be disarming? So lots of questions. But Leader is probably on standby for me. So I'll give him a buzz. Oh, and then I also... I'll have a TMI thing to share once he's up. Calling. All right, maybe he's getting set up. We'll see. Yeah, so we'll hang out with each other until he's ready to go. But the TMI thing is I stopped drinking coffee this past week. I was getting like jittery and bubble guts and all that kind of stuff. And so I took some medication that might make me have to jump off stream randomly. But it'll be good for me, and I'll keep it to myself about what I'm doing, at least in any vivid detail. So, yeah. I appreciate the motivated people in chat talking about giving likes. And if y'all got any questions while we're waiting for a leader to show up, that's cool. And then I guess I'll just address the government thing. So, do I think that we should have a balance of power against the government with private civilian firearms ownership? The general answer is yes. Do I think that private civilians could actually give the government a run for its money? The answer is yes. And I actually have a video specifically about it. It's called Marine Explains Asymmetric Warfare. I don't know how good it is and if I should update it. Explains asymmetric warfare. Boom. Here's another one. How did anybody catch Destiny? Did anybody catch him debating Sam Cedar? Was it good? Was it bad? Jeb says the Ukrainian situation is lesson in why nations should be armed. I agree. I think we should be like the Swiss. Like everybody should know how to use a firearm, and it should be a part of our culture and all that kind of stuff. And they can keep assault rifles at home, state-issued assault rifles at home. And then concealed weapons permits should be for people who are smart enough and good enough to have them. And I am not an ANCAP, so I'm, fuck schizoids getting guns and all that like ANCAP shit where it's like, oh, are you saying like somebody who's high on methamphetamine and who has paranoid schizophrenia shouldn't be able to get firearms? Yeah, I'm saying that, and I do think we have the authority to do that. So that whole fucking like ANCAP, like let's give machine guns to schizophrenic shit, I'm not about that. Oh, here in the Philippines, we required to take Neo. I don't know what that means. Yes, it was great. Cedar was seething. Good. I love 40-year-olds, which I will be shortly, seething because of younger men shitposting. Guns are cringe? No, you. Good memes. What is asymmetric warfare? Is that like insurgency? Yes, it is. That's exactly what it is. Neuro and drug test to own any firearms. Interesting. With privilege comes responsibility. In my mind, a firearm can be treated as a privilege since it comes with many responsibilities. I think it should be treated as a right, meaning that barring exceptions, you should have the right to exercise it. But I do get what you're saying. So let me just make sure that was actually the asymmetric warfare video. Yeah, so click on that video and hold on to it while we're waiting for Leader. I'll double check my shit. Is he going to ghost me? Was this all a big meme? Was this all a big joke? That's okay. I can hang out with chat. Don't have to have anything extreme planned. Are y'all excited about the Destiny manifesto? I'm super excited. I hope he actually reads it on stream though.
How we doing?
Hey, doing good, bud. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. And you don't need a camera, but do you have a camera?
Yes, I do, and I can turn it on. It's just a little bit it's gonna give us.
Yeah, if it fucks with your internet connection or whatever, we don't have to worry about it too bad. Just people like seeing faces, and I like seeing faces.
There we go. How are we doing?
Ah, beautiful. Yeah, we're doing great. I love it. Yeah, and then I don't know. Are you just getting off work, or did you dress like that for the conversation? Because I fucking love it. I love it either way.
I put the I would have been going to work today, but I put on the blazer because I thought it would make me look a little bit more professional. At least I can look like my points are coherent.
Okay, fair. Then, yeah, actually, where do you hail from? I mean, I'm detecting, not to be offensive, but I'm detecting a slight accent.
Absolutely, I am Australian.
Oh, okay, all right. Then that'll actually be really interesting because I understand that you guys, at least from a gun control perspective, you're used for our leftoid argumentation. Is that like you guys did the buyback? You had a mass shooting, you did the buyback, and then some.
Absolutely.
Serious violent, well, not serious violent crime, but the mass shootings and a lot of shootings and homicides dropped off. So yeah. All right, perfect. So how about you introduce yourself and tell the world about yourself?
Okay, so I am Leader. I don't know. It was the name I chose when I started streaming. I stream occasionally on Twitch TV. Sometimes video games. Other times I just jump on panels. I think that's where I actually met you though on one of Prime's panels. Like must have been 6 months to a year ago now. Like nice. It was a while ago.
Yeah.
I've been harassing Counterpoints here for this debate for a little while, like grabbing him, just be like, "Come on, let's do something."
Nah, we're catching up. I'm I'm on vacation for the next week and a half, so hopefully that lets me reset, get a little bit less burnt out, and then we can go back at it with both barrels. So no, I'm excited, and I appreciate the follow up and the follow through. As a matter of fact, that's a shout out to anybody who's in my DMs where you're like, I sent him a DM a week ago, I didn't get a response. Literally send that shit again, okay? Sometimes I get flooded. And I'm not going to mind at all people being persistent. So thank you for being persistent. And then, yeah, so I did kind of section the conversation or the debate as does anybody need firearms? Or specifically, I think we're talking about like civilians. Do civilians need firearms? And do you want to just kind of give us your perspective so far?
I think civilians are probably better without firearms. The reason why I say this is because uh, the idea of firearms is great. Having a gun for like self protection or like going out hunting, shooting, these are all really they're fun. It's in the self defense case. In self defense, it's good to like have something like that to defend your home. But like in terms of like, I think people on general are not really that smart, and having like a population with guns just breeds like a whole lot of negative outcomes, which uh, affects society pretty badly.
Yeah, we might. The funny thing is, we might agree a lot on the descriptive. I don't know if we're going to agree on the prescriptive, and then I'll be bringing in
Mm.
like a lot of historical shit. So I don't view firearms as like I don't take like a study and then go like, okay, Australia and the rest of the developed world have half the homicides that the United States does, and they don't have any mass shootings. Therefore, if we follow a similar legislative mindset, then we'll achieve the same outcomes. Even if that's entirely possible, which I don't think is legally or culturally possible inside the United States. That's not how I analyze it. The way that I analyze it is power. Like firearms is the capacity to commit violence. And the question is whether or not you have that power concentrated in the arms of the state or if you have it distributed between the population and the state. I appreciate that the Australian government, unless you're willing to count COVID, probably hasn't had a lot of authoritarian crackdown or whatever. And then same thing with like most European nations, they'll be like, oh yeah, we riot and we fight the cops and like all that kind of shit, but we don't actually have like mass ethnic slaughters. But the one of my appeals is through history is like we're only a generation or two away from mass ethnic slaughter. And also with kind of like the way things are destabilizing right now, I don't know if now is the time to be disarmed. So how do you factor like history, like World War II, being minority or subject to authoritarian governments? How does that factor into your analysis?
What I would say in terms of like history and I guess states have gotten really powerful. And if the war in Ukraine is anything, like you can have an armed populace, you can have a population that resists sort of like the control of a state's sort of like ability to sort of push down on the average man. But however, like the destructive force the state can bring when it's determined to enforce its will is it I don't like I don't see guns as like an effective means to bring about to sort of like slow down the state. Or if you're at your house and you know you say even you had an AR-15 a gun, having like dealing with drones, tanks, an organized military, it I just think guns aren't the most effective way to sort of deal with that particular scenario. I don't think it's a hit. I don't think it can stop like the I don't think it's the best way to stop sort of the machinations of the state from rolling forward and yeah and pushing its will against the people.
Yeah, so the I do agree that there's alternatives, but then I also think that it's kind of like a fire extinguisher, you know, like you better have it and not need it than need it and not have it kind of situation. And also when you look at like the Rohingya Muslims, for instance, who are getting slaughtered, if you're looking at Ukraine, I actually take the opposite lesson, which is a near peer insurgency can give an invading force hell. I mean, we're like I don't know, 90 days, 120 days into what was
Oh,
supposed to be a 2 week invasion.
it did, yes, absolutely. So like the first sort of like the first phase of this war, which was by Ukraine, was categorized by people throwing Molotov cocktails into the back of tanks and disrupting the Russian army going through, and that was incredibly courageous. But the problem is with this is that the Russian military was like, okay, so the civilians are now our combatants, and they started to just turn it into an artillery war where they'll just devastate everything and move in. And now it's sort of like now it's almost as a result of that, there's a humanitarian crisis where like there's like what happened in Bucha, which is just a little bit north of Kiev. If you sort of look at sort of like the cities that they've gone through, they've just been devastating them and just plowing through them. It's like
Yeah, but
it's
even
turned into
Mhm. Well, what I was going to
It's
say is so Bucha is actually the perfect example for this though, because those civilians didn't have any weapons. They were basically at the whim of the military forces that occupied them. Some people did resist, other people didn't, and as a result, there were indiscriminate killings of the civilian population in Bucha or Buka. So for me, I would never try to deny those people their right to resist. That's kind of actually the perfect example is like, even if the result is worse. So for instance, like you're saying the humanitarian catastrophe is worse because they resisted, so they were either artillery striked or slaughtered or raped or murdered and thrown into a shallow ditch, all that kind of stuff. For me, that doesn't deny them the right to resist, even if the result is shitty. Like I'm not going to say, let's say that there's like a town, and I'm like, hey, if 1/10 of you get your throat slit and thrown into, or like let's say that you guys don't resist, 1/10 of you will get your throat slit and thrown into a ditch. But if you guys resist, then 50% of you are going to have your throat slit and thrown into a ditch. Don't resist. I'm never going to say that to somebody,
I'm not
even if the
I'm
catastrophe is the opposite or the result
sorry.
is worse.
I'm not saying I'm not saying that resistance was bad. They did an effective resistance to what the Russians thought was going to be a walk into that country and take over. However, like my point is that I'm not saying that that resistance is bad. I'm very pro like the Ukrainians pushing the Russians out by whatever means necessary. But as a direct result of like the civilians sort of like standing up and sort of fighting in this, there's the Russians have been targeting civilians for that, and it's I don't know, it's horrible.
No,
That's what I'll say. It's horrible.
but there's a breakdown. There's a breakdown here that I just want to point out. So like I can agree with you. And like I'm not saying that you're making any kind of moral statement. I'm not saying that you're saying it's good or bad or indifferent. What I'm saying is that there's a conflict here. There's the principle of being able to resist, of which I think like firearms and asymmetric warfare and basically improvised explosives, like all that kind of stuff. I think those things are the right of the people who are being antagonized. And so for me, having a trained civilian populace who is capable, there's a backlog for logistics and there's a backlog for expertise. So if let's say Ukraine was invaded and nobody had any training in firearms, it's going to take 3 to 6 months just to get people familiarized with the basics so they can begin resisting. Whereas if you have a culture like, let's say, the Swiss, where most able-bodied young folk serve in the military. They're trained in firearms. They're trained on firearm safety. They're trained to be a part of the militia or part of the military. But then they do have a relatively safe gun culture. That, to me, is not only is it fine, but that basically acts as like a cultural deterrent against people coming in the first place, because they're like, I'm not going to fuck with those people. They all know how to fight. And so I'll leave it there. But my point being that, like, I understand you're not saying that you're against the principle of resistance, but what I'm saying is when you take away gun culture and when you take away their technological availability to resist, it kind of doesn't matter if you think they should be able to resist on principle if you're kind of sabotaging them in their efforts.
What I will say is that I know the Ukrainian government handed out weapons to the Ukrainian populace to like resist it, and so like the people were, whether or not they like started with gun control laws, they were given guns to sort of like help defend, and those who could did. Now, while I will say that availability of guns does sort of like help with your ability to be able to use them, gun laws aren't the same. Like less restrictive gun laws are not the same as having a well trained militia. and that I would say that there, at least I would believe that there would be more to like resistance than just firing a gun, and just
100%.
because like, and just because you're capable of firing a gun doesn't mean that you'd still probably need that a good chunk of that 3 months, 3 to 6 months to sort of like learn how to properly like engage forces, what sort of how to sort of cooperate with your neighbors, and when to sort of engage and when not to
Well,
engage.
well, now you're
I
talking my language.
absolutely.
Well. So actually, this is kind of interesting because this is maybe where we can agree that America is like the worst of both worlds. Like we have shitloads of guns, very little experience. We don't have like the logistics, the communication, the firearm safety, the proper screening, the vetting, the training. So, like a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed is the language of the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia, when it comes to like a historical translation, is like a well-trained militia. So I don't think we have a well-trained militia. I think we have a disorganized, grab-astic, two monkeys trying to fuck a football culture when it comes to guns. And if anything, like as a pro-gun person, that's one of the things that I abhor is with rights comes responsibilities, and we don't talk about responsibilities in the United States at all. And if you start talking about it, people yell at you.
Absolutely. I think that gun like when I believe it was in like 2007 when like gun control first sort of like came into like the general topic in the US. My understanding is that that resulted in like a mass panic buying of like weapons. And ever since sort of like the and ever since that topic had been brought up, there's sort of like more and more people have gone and committed to like buying more and more firearms, making, you know, sorry, making more and more making sort of more firearms available in the community and less and less and there was no effective gun legislation on at the time.
Right.
So effectively I think it's been pretty poor. What I will say is that the gun is as sort of like from my sort of looking into it, it seems to me that, and sort of what I've sort of gleaned from online is that states which are more restrictive on like on how to buy a gun, should there be a waiting period, should there be background checks, does this person have like any sort of criminal felons and stuff, all these sort of things correlate directly into sorry, may not correlate directly, but it's sort of like the
Yeah,
states
they
with the most
correlate with less
restrictive
deaths.
gunfire. Yeah, are the ones with less deaths, and Australia is like a perfect example of that. And so I'm not necessarily saying that come in, grab all your guns and take them away, but I think that it is madness to sort of suggest that there doesn't there's shootings happening in broad daylight with like large amounts of people being killed, and a section of like the American public just wants to turn away and say nothing's the problem here.
Hmm.
I would say that guns are sort of bleeding into sort of like a lot of problems that like Americans face already. Like if you've got like violent crime, I can't imagine what it's like being a police officer having to like if you're in a dangerous area, and then you can tell me about this. And like every sort of encounter you have is like a chance for you to be shot at. That would almost give someone PTSD.
Well, so yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So number one, like
Yeah.
I think you're right. One of the things that you said that I agree with is that I think guns are an exacerbating factor, but they're an exacerbating factor in a way that doesn't, like correlative. I think is the word, not necessarily causative. So, for instance, like there's cities in Indiana with like a one per 100,000 homicide rate that are directly across the border from like Chicago, Illinois, right? Which probably has like a 20 per 100,000 homicide rate. Clearly, and there's more guns in Indiana than there are in Chicago. So what's the difference? It's clearly not the guns. It's at least partially the culture, the material conditions, poverty, crime, drug organizations, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of correlative stuff. I think it's undeniable that the states that have like stronger gun control, like there hasn't. The last time that I think Japan had a mass terrorist attack was like 1992 with a sarin gas attack in the metro station. then I think the last time that Australia had a mass shooting or whatever was Port Arthur or whatever your guys' main incident was that led to a lot of your laws.
There has been like so Australia, we haven't completely banned guns. There
Hmm.
has been sort of like mass shootings, but it's more been like within it's more being like a mass suicide type thing, not like a
Yeah.
go out gunman sort of like gun down like a bunch of people.
Well, yeah, and so that's the thing. Like, I think I'd be an idiot to deny the correlative thing that we could pass more strict gun control, probably save some lives and all that kind of stuff. But I also want you to conceptualize. Maybe this will demystify some of the madness. Most Americans don't deal with this statistically. And what I mean by that is like you'll
Yeah.
hear about one or two mass shootings a year that affect like the civilian population, but one or two, you're talking about like, I don't know, 100, 200 people inside the United States. There's 320 million people. So you're talking about like the same chances of getting hit by lightning. Not that it's not there and not that people aren't terrified of it and not that it's not a fucking stain on our culture. Okay, so I'm not denying any of that shit. I'm just saying statistically,
I completely agree with that.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Then when it comes to like 80, 90% of homicides, these are caused by two things. One is domestic violence, which is probably 20 to 30% of homicides, which is basically like fucked up families get into fights and spats. They do drugs or they're drunks or whatever, and then they end up killing each other. That's, 20 to 30% of our homicides are domestic violence. And then 70% of our violence is like drug related criminal organizations killing the shit out of each other. And those drug related criminal organizations are oftentimes based in the rough side of town. They're competing with each other. They're young men without very many prospects, and they kill the shit out of each other and largely don't hurt the civilians, except for like the people who are in the immediate neighborhood. So when you're talking about like American culture or American toleration of this, that's because pretty much everybody has a gun. Suburbs got guns. The country's got guns. The city's got guns. Everybody's got guns. But when you're actually talking about the homicides, you have two possibilities. One, you're dealing drugs and you're getting killed, or actually three possibilities. One, domestic violence. Two, you're a part of a criminal organization and you kind of take on that risk when you become a part of a criminal organization. And then three, the 1 in a million or 1 in a billion chance of being involved in a mass shooting. And that's kind of where I hope that demystifies it a little bit, basically.
Um, sure, and I can sort of see like the I can sort of see like someone sitting down who's a gunner and say, "Look, I do everything right, and I'm not a crazy maniac who's going around shooting my gun out on the street and such. I follow the regulations fine. I'm a law-abiding citizen. Why should I be forced to why should I have these restrictions placed on me? I sort of get that. It does sort of come out as a little bit hysterical, I guess, when the media just hyper fixates on these types of things. And if it hasn't affected you, then I guess then I can sort of see like everyone likes to live in their own bubble. I get that.
Mhm. Yeah,
What I
we're
will
like the
say
most
that
like libertarian individualist nation on the planet.
yeah, absolutely. And there's positives to that. I think it bleeds into society a little bit more. I'll also say like in relation to a dark topic, if you will, like in relation to like suicide. Um one sort of like a lot of times when people go and sort of to commit that sort of thing, they it's not always a final type of thing. It's not always, after, once someone's tried, it's usually they get like they sort of get a second chance. When I say that, I mean they sort of commit it and they realize, that maybe this was a horrible mistake. Sometimes that doesn't happen. But with guns, it's always a lethal occupation. Like that sort
Yeah,
of things,
can
and
I
having it
No, sorry, go ahead.
and depression and anxiety, or depression and guns in relation to the house, and maybe even this is sort of like helping to play into a little, maybe even this is feeding into like why, into teens and stuff like that. But I feel like the sort of presence of a firearm always makes these things lethal, and if it's used, then there's nothing really anyone can do to sort of like remedy that situation. The problem is
Yeah.
gone before it can be addressed.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And this is something that somebody tried to explain to me why my logic was flawed, and I still don't understand how my logic's flawed. I think if you do like a statistical analysis of like per capita suicide for developed nations, they're pretty much like across the board very similar. And like a European cohort actually, I think is nearly identical to the United States. I think we're like 10%, maybe 5% higher, something like that. But what's actually funny is the French make up for everybody else being relatively okay. Like so, like the French are like a bunch of existential nihilists who are just ready to kick the bucket. So they're punching above their weight class when it comes to suicide. But the point being, like, I get it. I get the finality. And then one of the things that my commenter said, which is something that I kind of bite the bullet on in these conversations, is there is a problem with power. And power, when it is consolidated, tends to be tyrannical or authoritarian or do things that are against the population. And the population doesn't have much ability to resist. I think that firearms basically give us the balance of power against the federal government. Not everybody agrees with my assessment, but I think I can make a strong case for it. And then not only that, when you make these arguments about like statistics, who's going to kill who's, mass shootings, all that kind of stuff, I think there's a lot of other shit that I support that maybe people stereotypically on the right don't support that would address these things from different avenues. Leftists call it the material conditions. For instance, like universal health care. Better access to psychological services, better quality education, better access to economic opportunities, better vocational or better access to secondary education. So to give people opportunities, and then also like mentorship and a communitarian mindset, because we are the most libertarian individualist country on the planet. I would like us to get back to a communitarian mindset where we are not just responsible for ourselves, we're responsible for our communities. So if there's a fucked up community a few blocks away from my house, then it's my job as an individual citizen to not wait on the government and actually go mentor people and try to help them get out of the cycles of poverty and violence that they're already in. So my point being that, like, guns are such an entrenched part of American culture, and I think there's enough people like me who have done the utilitarian analysis and they're willing to bite the bullet, that from an American perspective at least, we should be addressing the other variables, because the gun variable is probably the most intractable. It's probably the one that's not going away.
I can agree. Like, I don't think like anyone. I think like if the federal government came out today saying, all right, we're doing a gun buyback, you're all going to hand back your guns, I think that, you'll probably have a bunch of states try and secede from the union. So I don't think that is, I don't think that's probably the best way to go about this. I think, however, waiting periods. Checks on someone's, see if they've been into any psychological wards, check their mental health, make sure that, they're not at least in the immediate vicinity going to go off and do something nuts with it. And make sure they're proficient with the weapon. They're not going to harm themselves or anyone else. I guess sort of like, check with local enforcement and sort of federal enforcement to make sure that they're not a threat anywhere. And if they are a threat, if they are going to use a gun, sort of like use a gun or mishandle it, or there's something that's a little bit fishy about them. No, you don't need people with you don't need the crazies with the guns. The crazies will do crazy things without guns. You don't need to arm them.
Well, let me piss off the, dozen libertarians that are in my chat or whatever. So the one thing that I'm actually completely okay with that is against the right wing, it's against Republicans or whatever. I want everybody to be able to get pretty much what they want. I think that, assault rifles or whatever, semi-automatic, large capacity rifles or whatever, I think they're a pretty big part of our culture. And I would be okay with some restrictions, but the main thing that I'm okay with that most people aren't okay with is something called like red flag laws, emergency risk protection orders. And the reason why is because oftentimes, and I want conservatives and libertarians before they click off, I want them to think about what I'm saying here. There's this thing that happens in the wake of a mass shooting where law enforcement has almost always interviewed the mass shooter, or the FBI was aware of him or something like that. And so conservatives will say, oh, well, we could have prevented this mass shooting if law enforcement did their job. But law enforcement has their hands tied when it comes to these incidents, because if somebody hasn't committed a crime, and they haven't committed a crime in the past, and there's no evidence, like immediate evidence that they're a threat to themselves or to others, the only thing that you're going to have is basically you're not going to have anything to go off of. Whereas if you do have digital evidence, digital forensic evidence, multiple witnesses saying this kind of thing, that this person is a threat to themselves or others, that they're making plans, this, that, the other. With emergency red flag laws, you can basically investigate those things, because even though having homicidal fantasies isn't in and of itself a crime, and even owning a firearm and having homicidal fantasies isn't a crime, maybe you need to chill the fuck out for a little bit. Maybe we need to take the guns away for a little bit. You can go see a judge. You can hang out. You can, go see a therapist and all that kind of stuff. I think the main thing that people are scared of, though, is one, the system being abused. Two, due process not being available on the back end, meaning that a random judge is going to be able to take your right, and you won't be able to see a jury of your peers in order to get it taken care of. And then three, basically, like, what's the standard of evidence for having your shit taken away? And the truth is, we don't know that yet, because we haven't been doing this system.
I guess this will sort of feed back into what we're saying earlier. I don't think that I understand that I don't think that guns are, I don't think I think if government legislation needs to be I need to sort of the government and sort of how they legislate this, that needs to be figured out. And I think that that you guys probably have like a little bit of thinking to do about reorganizing your system a little bit better, so that the things like these issues can be handled well, and people can sort of be confident that the government isn't just going to come in and take your guns away, and the finality of it, unjustly, we'll say, unjustly take away your guns, or just because like the government feels like it. And so I can sort of see that.
Well, how do
um
you square this with, like, I'm not trying to scare the gun grabbers with, or I'm not trying to scare the gun holders with, we're going to come take your guns, but that if you look at like the argument that they're going to have, and the argument that I'm going to have, is that a lot of these things you don't get back once you give them up. Like so, for instance, like Australia has been, as far as I understand it, every time there's a new incident, you've basically been tightening. Canada's the same way. In response to a mass shooting in the United States, they basically banned transfer of handguns. So
so
that's kind of like where, how is this not the slippery slope?
So with Australia, each state decides its gun laws. It has like each state has like variations on sort of the laws are at. Mostly sort of like to have a firearm here, I believe you have to have like a certain amount of land, and generally like a need sort of like a pest, which is usually sort of which comes with sort of like farm plots and stuff like that. I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that's a bad system. I think you'd have a hard time convincing Americans that this is the
Yeah,
perfect
there's
sort
like
of what this is the
snowball
perfect
chance in
system for
hell.
that. Right, yeah. So, I as for like it getting tightening, I don't think that's necessarily true of Australia, because it was a conservative government in 1996. It was John Howard who was a conservative leader who brought this legislation forward, and it was the Queensland Premier at the time who got like thrown out. To the Queenslanders were very conservative, very pro-gun. They threw that guy out for even trying to take away the guns. But I don't believe that maybe it could be true of Canada, but I don't believe it's necessarily true of Australia. We don't sort of guns aren't really that big of an issue here. If you want to fire a gun, you can go to a firing range and pay sort of like a bunch of money
Yeah, but then it
to go and play
becomes
around with the ARs. And
then it becomes a privilege and not a right. And not only that,
it's true.
like
Yeah.
we were talking about the other things that you would like to see a competent militia member be able to do, for instance, like logistics, communications, small unit tactics, all that kind of stuff. You don't get that by, being rich and paying $3,000 in order to, go to the range. And here's the other thing
No,
too,
no,
like,
it's not $3,000. It's so like I think for like to go to the range around this, it's usually it's anywhere between like $75 to $200, depending on what ammunition you want to fire, and you sort of get a
right.
good go at it.
Yeah, sure, but my broader point being that there's a skill set that I want my son to have, I want my friends to have, that I think is important for like independence and self-reliance and all that kind of stuff. And that does involve communication. That does involve situational awareness. That does involve small unit tactics. That does involve Like I feel like a part of an extremely privileged class of American because I'm a veteran, so I got to read all the textbooks, that the military was using before I became a civilian. And then like a lot of these textbooks are available to the public, but at the same time, I feel like the part of the balance of power between the United States civilians and the United States government is the fact that all of this information is open source. Some civilian gear is frankly better than some military gear. And while there obviously is like a price barrier, you can technically be as proficient as you want to be with firearms. And so for me, like you're saying, you would like us to move to the Commonwealth model. For me, I would rather move to like the Swiss model, where like every able-bodied young person, who like obviously we're on the volunteer system, but if there was a way to like you want to learn how to shoot guns, we'll send you to boot camp. We'll basically train you how to use firearms, and if you get through boot camp and you pass a psych test, we'll give you a state-issued assault rifle that you can keep inside your house. Then, if you want a concealed weapons permit because you technically have the right to keep and bear arms, as our base Supreme Court just affirmed, then you can keep a pistol on you for self-defense. And here's the limitations that we think with that. Get licensed at 21, blah 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 blah. So my point being that like I think there are restrictions that we could do to improve our gun culture, but my goal would be to improve the gun culture, not to destroy it.
As I said, like I think the Australian sort of model works. It works fine for Australians. I don't see a problem with I don't see a problem with sort of like what you've laid out. If you want to sort of, if you sort of value independence and like this is a part of like people, sort of like people growing up and sort of being able to defend themselves. I think that's a noble goal, and I don't see a problem with your with the sort of your prescription to sort of how to sort of ail this particular prominent society. If we're on the same page about sort of like that guns are more or less sort of like a little bit too available, you would say, and that there should be sort of like more restrictions on like on it should be harder for people to get their hand a little bit harder for people to get their hands on guns, and yeah
I'll be
yeah.
I'll give you my dictator for a day scenario. So dictator for a day, I'm not going to make anybody happy. I would say 18 years old. You should have access to pump actions, bolt actions, and revolvers the same way that we have the standard now, where basically like you go in, you pass a federal background check, we hand you a gun. Literally, it's that simple. And the reason why is because there's the well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. You can conceal carry a revolver and do self-defense all day, and you can actually reload a revolver pretty quickly if you get good at it. So you're already meeting the base standard of the Second Amendment. Then when you're 21, I would say at that point you can go in for state-sponsored, state-subsidized training. So it's literally free, free at the point of entry. So it's not denied to any swinging dick or swinging booby inside the United States, and they'll teach you. They'll teach you, the basic safety rules. They'll teach you basic marksmanship. They'll teach you how to shoot. They'll teach you how to clean. They'll teach you all the things that people should know in order to operate and keep a firearm safely. And once you pass that course, you get access to the semi-automatic. So you get access to semi-automatic pistols, semi-automatic rifles. And a lot of these shooters are like 18 and 19 years old. So the hope would be that by the time that they were able to go through the semi-automatic training or whatever, one, hopefully they've matured. Two, hopefully they've timed out of their fantasies. And then three, hopefully a healthier gun culture would prevent them from doing what they're doing right now. Then, still dictator for a day for general purposes. I would harden the fuck out of schools and public venues. Basically, I could go for another 5 minutes on that subject alone, but I would not have the schools be as open and available as they are right now. And then, finally, semi-autos, training, all that kind of stuff. Honestly, that's pretty much it. And then I would like to adopt like a Swiss gun culture where it's like, yes, you can have guns. Yes, you can kill people. Yes, you can have, you have the right to self-defense. Yes, you have the right to carry. Yes, you have the right, but here's all these responsibilities that we will subsidize for your benefit. So it's free to you, but we expect this out of you if you're going to exercise this right. And I have no problems with that.
So when you say, just to pick off the end bit before I go into the rest of it, so you with these sort of like rights and responsibilities, would you say that people would be subject to like, say a license, like every year or 2 years have to go back, complete a firearms course, mental, sort of like make sure that they're not horribly suicidal and thinking, of kicking the bucket anytime soon.
No.
That things are going well in their life. No, none of that. None of that.
No. You got your license. You're a citizen. You've been well trained, all that kind of stuff. And then, but what I would do though, for instance, is like I'm perfectly okay with universal healthcare. I don't know, like I'm trying to propagandize that to the right. So I'm perfectly okay with having publicly subsidized healthcare and publicly subsidized mental health. I also think that having like a armory, like a community armory, where you say, "Hey, are you a little down in the dumps? Are you a little scared about what you're going to do? Are you, kind of not feeling?" No questions asked. We have a basically like an armory downtown. You can come there, secured location, drop off your firearm, no questions asked. We'll keep it, we'll maintain it, we'll save it, we'll keep your serial number in that. It's like a vault, like a bank. And then when you feel like coming and pick it up, you can come and pick it up. And then that way, suicidal people who feel like, okay, I'm in a rough spot right now. I have a bunch of guns in my house. I'm worried about what I'm going to do, but I can't trust anybody with my firearms. What if they steal it, or what if they disappear, or if I tell somebody that I'm in a crisis, they're going to take my shit away. They can just go to the armory, no questions asked, and deposit it and come back when they're in a better spot. And I think that's part of the thing that I want to retain as well. Like I'm more authoritarian, or I'm more communitarian, where I want Americans to start thinking about each other when they're making their decisions. But I also think that like keeping a core of liberty, that's kind of the point of our country. So if you don't maintain some level of personal responsibility or accountability or freedom, then there really wasn't a point to the American experiment if it just becomes a nanny state like any European country.
I can respect that you don't wish to become a nanny state. What I will say though is that in your model you said that you want sort of like an armory, sort of like a place where people can safely sort of deposit their guns. And sort of like someone who can look after them if they're not feeling well. But a lot of these people, when they're sort of going through that state, it's more like they're reclusive. They'll socially contract, and they won't. A lot of the times, like they don't want to reach out to people. Like they'll be in too much of a negative mind space to go out ahead and reach out and say, "Man, this would be a really good idea. Here, take my guns from me." I don't like the judgment's already clouded by sort of like what they're going through at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say to that? So like what would you think about that particular?
Well, we already have Baker Acts, and then we also, like, I think the emergency risk protection orders are perfectly fine. So a Baker Act is basically saying that you can be involuntarily committed to a psychiatric institution if you're a threat of great harm or death to yourself or to others. So I'm perfectly okay with family members, friends, all that kind of stuff, like looking out for those telltale signs and involving law enforcement or a shrink or a social worker or whatever in those respects. And then the emergency risk protection orders as well. They're not just for homicides, they're also for suicides as well. So you can say, hey, this person's self-medicating with marijuana and amphetamines. This person is becoming reclusive. This person has made threats to commit suicide on social media. Here's the links to the social media things. They told their best friend that they're going to commit suicide. Here's a sworn written affidavit from the friend saying that stuff. And then, here's this compilation of documentation that basically means that we need to intervene with this human being. And for me, like, I do want that level of due process. You can tell me that some people are going to commit suicide or some people are going to commit homicide, and it's not going to catch everybody. I'm okay with it not catching everybody, and I do think that level of due process is required in order to avoid abuse.
Well, that's a good way of looking at it. I I think that your prescription with how to deal with it is still leagues better than what America
What we're
has.
dealing with right now, which is,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
it's, oh, we just had another mass shooting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eh, it
There's not
happens.
really. There's not. Yeah. Pretty
Get
much.
more cops. Uh, like no, yeah, that's actually, it is the American prescription, and it does suck. And if there's anything that I'm trying to do with, I know that like communitarian mindsets or these kind of like state interventions are more stereotypically like left wing, but I'm trying to get these ideas back into the right wing, that we're a community, that we should care about each other, that we should try to involve each other in each other's lives. Because when we look at like rugged individualism, we see what we have, which, I'm kind of like, I'm anti-nihilism, I'm anti-hedonism, I'm anti-self-destruction, I'm anti fucking yourself over or fucking other people over just because the world is scary and terrifying and painful. So I kind of want to go back to the right and say like, hey, you got a lot of shit right, but this whole like fucking rugged individualism bullshit needs to die. And Reaganism, which a lot of this is trapped in Ronald Reagan's like political philosophy, which has dominated American politics for 40 years. It just needs to fucking die. It needs to die with the boomers. We need to be more communitarian.
I can agree with that. I think that's pretty spot on. I mean, my ideal society, not quite the same as yours, but we all have different ideas about how we should function and govern ourselves. I would personally say that world's a big scary place, huge, and that with every passing day and month, we're making it harder for like the average person to sort of live, breathe, to sort of like go and be out there, and say that we're making the world a more toxic place environmentally, with whether it be nuclear, whether it be coal, whether it be by guns, whether it be by sort of like how we're sort of treating the environment around us. I would say that it's the government's responsibility to try and make at least where you live a more livable place. Try and reduce deaths where you can. Try and bring down the mortality where it's possible. Try and sort of make the world a better place. And I'm not describing it terribly well here, but what I think is that I think that it's becoming more risky, and as we sort of go forward into the future with like nuclear weapons, we're only going to sort of add more sort of dimensions to that risk on how we live and what we live. And that part of sort of like when I sort of approach guns, it's sort of like it's society. Society doesn't need a reason sort of like to sort of enable people to sort of who are already sort of like the weakest to sort of go out, hurt themselves, hurt each other, and and I understand that the government is a big scary thing, and that it's tyrannical. It wants to lean over you, and it wants to sort of control how you act, and how and what you should do, and in a lot of cases it's not right. And I'd say like the even Australia has had like a bit of an authoritarian streak recently. But I think the solution to that is strengthening democracy, and strengthening people's ability to have a say in the system and sort of be a part of that system. And I don't think that no matter how much force or if we arm the civilians, if we sort of like if no matter how much sort of power we give back to the people, I still think that the government will sort of lord over and be able to sort of like inflict destruction upon people. And if a bad juju of bad egg gets in the middle of say in the president, or like the president of the United States, or as the prime minister, and sort of gets most of their ministers there, I don't feel the best solution is to sort of put in to sort of strengthen our ability, our say in sort of in the democracy itself, rather than try and fight the government should that ever come to pass. And
Well,
that seems
well,
to be what
I want to interject because I was kind of laughing when you were describing like how fucked up shit is and like how it's getting more fucked up by the day. And the reason why I was like smirking a little bit is because like this is the exact wrong time to talk to conservatives about gun control, because like food
no,
prices,
I agree.
yeah, like food prices are shooting up. Government's kind of being a dick. We don't know what inflation's going to do tomorrow. We don't know if we're going to be eating our dogs in 6 months. Like telling a bunch of people who are like kind of just watching the way the wind blows on how fucked up shit's going to get. This is kind of the conservative mindset is. This is why we have them in the first place, is because we're not there yet, but if shit goes absolutely fucking sideways, then we have the so for instance, like this is individualist and it's not utilitarian, so I concede that on the gate, but because I have firearms and because I have property and because I have the ability to grow food and because I have friends who grow food, I'm not saying I'm gonna survive. I mean, I could fucking get schwacked like the first day. But if shit goes absolutely sideways and people start breaking into each other's houses looking for food and they're starving and they're fighting and there's riots and the cops aren't doing what they can because they can't control everything that's going on and all that kind of stuff, I have the ability to at least get with a group of like-minded people, compile our food, secure our location, and basically try to wait out the storm and survive together as best we can. And even I have some friends who are, farmers and ranchers and stuff. So there's a possibility that we could be self-reliant enough to the point that we would survive. But if I was completely detached from the conservative mindset, completely detached from violence, completely detached from firearms, and completely detached from, I don't know, rural living or conservative folk or anything like that, my chances of like survival drop down to fucking zero. And so my reliance isn't on the government doing what's right or the government becoming more politically democratic, or it caring about its citizens more, or more citizens becoming involved in the government. My survival is literally reliant on me and people who think like me. And I think that's like, I think that's the way conservatives think, is like, we only rely on ourselves, or like, and I'm not saying like literally, obviously most of us shop at the grocery store, but I'm saying like we have a backup to the backup to the backup to the backup, because like plans, because we expect things to not always be good.
I appreciate that mindset, and I think all power to you. But when I'm talking about how fucked up shit can get, right? When you sort of think about like what happens with nuclear power and how that's necessary,
You need to
how
clarify
that's
for
sort of
chat. Do you mean energy or nuclear bombs?
both, both. So like you can get uranium, right, and it will shoot off trillions of neutrons out into the ether. And
Mhm.
if one neutron hits your DNA, it can cause a change which can give you cancer, for example.
Mhm.
The way we're sort of like advancing forward in society, it seems to be, is that as we progress technologically, we're also creating more risk factors for just living. And it doesn't seem like, and governments and sort of like the way society is, it doesn't appear as if like we're on a trajectory to like reduce, to like sort of like stay the same, or even reduce our numbers. It's like we need more technology. We need more sort of, oh, terribly sorry. We need more technology. We need more sort of we need more power. We need more people. We need to continually grow this experiment till like it reaches the absolute pinnacle. And from that, it seems as if like every sort of step forward we take is another sort of it is another way, it presents another way for another sort of risk factor on like our way of living and our way of society. And maybe sort of like going out to a farm somewhere, or out into the middle of out into the middle of the mountains, you know it will be enough. But I mean, the
It'll be
way we're
enough
sort
for
of changing our
individuals.
environment around
Yeah,
the
it'll
way we're
be.
changing our environment around us, it's like you're not gonna, if the shit gets fucked up. What is it? Okay, take Ukraine. So how a country is going to respond to like larger countries being able to invade smaller countries? Well, how's that going to? They'll arm up with nuclear weapons. But if any of them think like, I don't want to get invaded by Russia. I don't want to live under that. Hell no. United States isn't going to protect us, or the global system won't. The only sort of recourse we have is to completely annihilate each other just to survive. And it's this, and I think that sort of like the solution to the solution to the problems we have is, it's more of a, maybe it's more of a collective one, as you say. But I also think that, yeah, I just think that, I think that that our government needs to actively be involved in trying to sort of reduce sort of like the risk to being able to live, and make sort of life better. I understand that that's not perfect, but
No, I appreciate you.
and it
I appreciate you, and I hear you. And then I think this just boils down to a fundamental
yeah.
difference in worldview. But I'm okay with the difference in worldview, because honestly, like, as much as I have like libertarians in my chat like reeing because they're like, he's Australian, why do we care about his opinion on guns? Like the point being that like it actually does take all kinds to make society function. And on top of that, like part of the reason why I'm still having these conversations and I enjoy these conversations so much is because I think that like you probably serve a social function that I can't fulfill, and I might serve a social function that you can't fulfill. And by us
Absolutely.
coming together and putting our brains together and putting our perspectives together, we can actually get something that's remotely functional. And I'm okay with that. I just think that there needs to be a backup to the backup to the backup to the backup, which is why I'm temperamentally liberal. I like being accepting and considering other people's ideas and interacting with people who are different than me. But I was raised by conservatives who told me like, hey, your grandparents used to fucking like, scrounge for potatoes in fields that had already been like harvested because they were starving during the Great Depression, and then they grew up and then they fought in World War II. So compared to your shitty millennial problems, you got a bunch of problems, but there are people who have had it worse, and it wasn't that long ago. So you got to keep your head on a swivel. So if shit gets fucked up, you're ready for it. And so that's kind of a more my mindset because that's how I was raised. But is there any other ground that you would like to cover? Any other perspectives that you think that we missed?
Um, no, I think that I think we've done a pretty good job. I kind of went on a little bit of a tangent at the end there.
No, I love
But
it. People can see your motivated reasoning and your philosophy. So I think it's great.
no, but I once again, as I said, I appreciate your viewpoint as well, and I think that you provide like a sort of something for me to think about at least is to sort of a more community based approach to how to sort of deal with the you know
Also,
the
come up with
tragedy
an
that is gun
arguments that
violence in the
yeah, come up with arguments that appeal to conservatives, their alleged claim for personal responsibility, right? Because
absolutely.
if you go at like, oh, other people are going to get hurt, they're going to be like, well, fuck them, like that's going to be their
Yeah, that's
conservative
true.
mentality. Whereas if you say, hey, you need to be personally responsible so that your actions don't affect other people, and here's what we can do that would help other people become as responsible as you are. That kind of jerks them off a little bit, gives them a little bit of an ego boost, and maybe they'll be more receptive to the argument.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. No, right. Yes, thank you for that. I appreciate that,
What time is
counterpoints.
it where you're at right now?
It's early in the morning.
Fuck yeah.
It's 11 a.m. for me right now.
Well, I appreciate you coordinating the call and being persistent, and it was awesome. Shout yourself out to the 72 people in chat right now, which is actually like that's pretty high for me. Like I'm normally between like 50, so actually having 72 people is base. So yeah, shout yourself out.
Hey guys. I'm Leader TV. I sometimes talk about politics. I play sometimes video games on Twitch. Yeah, you can find me at Twitch. Yeah, I hopefully my rant didn't completely just throw you guys off base there at the end there, but I like to talk about things. I like to try and see like everyone's perspective. I'm a chill guy, and I'll happily talk to anyone, and engage with the opinions they put forward. I think that is necessary for society going forward.
Awesome. I appreciate you, buddy. It was super fun. Don't be a stranger, and you have yourself a beautiful day.
You have a wonderful day too, Counterpoints. Thank you.
Catch it. All right. Full camera. What's up, sluts? So we got like 70 people in chat. Funky Junkie Monkey, we're not out yet. So if you got questions or whatever, go ahead and throw them in chat. I'll check out your questions before we dip. I don't just jump out. You must be new here. Go ahead and follow and, at me in chat. Do at Counterpoints in chat if you want me to answer the questions. And I'm going to scroll to the top, scroll to the bottom. And like, we're not in like a huge rush, but I'm actually on vacation for the next week and a half. So we're going to get caught up on content. I'm going to go shoot some interrogator episodes. I'm going to give some essays for Taste to edit. I'm probably going to edit some essays myself. And we're going to try to get into no horse-sized duck. I didn't see your question. Go ahead and ask it again. And then we're going to try to get into a more flowy schedule. That way we can get you guys pre-recorded content more consistently. I know we're relatively consistent on the live streams where you guys get at least like one to three shows a week, but I do want to also get you consistent pre-recorded content as well, whether that's political essays or Warhammer stuff. So we're working on it. So I'm sending you apologies right now for us not being consistent, but we're working on it and we will be. Oh, and also donos appreciated, super chats appreciated, subs, Twitch subs are appreciated. Everything's appreciated. Going to patreon.com/counterpoints is appreciated. Whatever you guys want to do, I appreciate you. Not required, but it is appreciated. Obviously, the goal is eventually to go full time, and I do take time away from my family in order to come do this, and it is very fun for me. So I'm not complaining at all, but obviously, I would love to do this full time, and that requires money. At Counterpoints, can we establish gun owner temporary gun keeper confidentiality too? Yeah, absolutely. Like a Nijatok 80 says, at Counterpoints, can we establish gun owner temporary gun keeper confidentiality too? Yeah, so literally if you wanted to have like HIPAA restrictions, then something similar from a legal perspective where there was like either no questions asked or some questions asked, but it's private. I'm 100% good with that. Do you know Nate Higgers? I don't, and I'm worried that it's a prank. Vulcan Blackfire. There are similar laws elsewhere, though. Yeah, sure, but we actually have to come up with a template that actually works for everybody across the country. That way, we reduce mass shootings, and that way, we don't have to worry about the gun control argument every 30 seconds. We have to find the middle. We have to be militant centrists. We have to be imperial centrists, as Ragnarok would say. Nihilists Anonymous says, at Counterpoints, that's only because he hasn't heard my prescription of making more children drone pilots. So true. We should just make Ender's Game a reality in the current era. At Counterpoints, is that some sort of Slanesh pleasure device you are using? Yes, Lucifer the Doberman. This is called a Theracane. When I have knots in my shoulders and my neck while I'm talking to y'all, I basically use this S-shaped device to stab my knots in my shoulders so I can stream for longer without having a splitting headache. So, Decor77 says, his ideal society is weak and full of cakes. Yeah, so I don't... There's like a dissident right concept from Mencius Medbug, I think, or Moldbug or whatever the fuck his name is, where you kind of like create society and then society creates you. I subscribe to that concept, so I think that you need to balance it out and you need to think about the next generation that you're creating, not just whether or not you're reducing harm. At Counterpoints, convincing conservatives to not be anti-statist, challenge 100. True. So true. But it's also part of the reason why we've gotten fucked, and look at how much state power is achieved for conservatives within the past couple of years. Did this fucking dude just bundle nuclear war in with the bad? Yeah, I think, yeah, he did mention that he was like anti-nuclear in general, which is interesting. Too easy? How is that a problem? Not sure what you're talking about. Democracy is R-worded. I'm just going to say it. Democracy is retarded. Churchill was right. Yes, democracy is the worst form of government except for all of the other ones. Strengthening democracy means strengthening government in that context. So true. Including strengthening my right to say provide all the children individual nuclear weapons and spend grades 1 through 3 teaching them how to land a nuclear warhead. So true, King. To Connor, I got you if shit goes down. Thank you, Astronaut Farmer. I appreciate it. Risk is inherent to life. So true. That's why I root myself in conservative perspectives. If it gets to that point, it would be a result of conservatives going off the rails, not because AOC is woke. Yeah, but I would see these people bouncing off of each other as kind of bad, and we should have reasonable conversations with Australians like the one we just did. Sorry if I'm breathing in your ear, but I'm old as fuck, and I'm tired as fuck, and I spend 8 hours in the chair, and I'm trying to get the fuck out of here, even though I love you guys. So... I love you guys so much, but my back hurts, and I want to lie down, and I want to enjoy my vacation. I'll give him a follow. What's his Twitch? It's Leader, but the ER at the end is a 3. Leader, 3R. I'm fucking malding. Garbage, when are you not malding? At Counterpoints, which person group do you blame the most for the lack of responsibility in terms of U.S. gun culture? Libertarians! Who the right wing has appealed to. Who conservatives have appealed to. So I blame Libertarian, ANCAP, Reaganite. Actually, I blame Ronald Reagan, but I blame all the people who follow Ronald Reagan, and I blame the libertarians that he's created. Love you, Connor. That was a good convo. Thank you, buddy. Thank you for being here. At Counterpoints, how hopeful are you of convincing conservatives to be less Reagan anti-statist? I think it's happening already. And what strategy would be the most effective to convince them? Boomer side. Now, killing all the boomers or letting them die of natural causes. At Counterpoints, any other spots I can follow you and read your stuff on? Yeah, so you can... let me repost the video. Let me find it. I'll do the asymmetric warfare one. The Marine explains asymmetric warfare. Marine, there we go. Yeah, you can also follow me on Twitter, _counterpoints_. So I'll just post that real quick. There's my YouTube. Then Twitter. I'm just going to post my @. You guys know how to copy paste, right? @_counterpoints_. Excuse me. Sorry for belching in your ear. I'm getting old. Need to sleep. Need sleep. Y'all need sleep too. Some of you are wages. I'm trying to scroll back up. Is there any point to having 30 plus guns beyond love for guns? No. But loving guns is a good enough reason. Damn. All right, here we go. I'm back in it. Back in it. I caught that 00. Cool. All right, here we go. At Counterpoints. Yep, we were there. So can I say fuck Highland PD and Illinois State for not doing anything diving deeper into the shooter? Yeah. But we need emergency risk protection orders so they can do their fucking jobs. So if they have ERPOs, then yeah, you can say fuck them. Connor is a political streamer I agree with the most. Based. Astronaut Farmer, there are dozens of us. There are dozens of us that are militant, moderate centrists who don't want to kill trans and gay people and black people just because they're gay and trans and black, and then also love guns but like people in general and want society to improve. There are dozens of us. I'm going to post a Discord at the end, so if you want the Discord, as a matter of fact, I'll just post it now. What are your thoughts on the July 4th Chicago shooting? I don't know. I don't know enough about it. Just the scumbag pussy. Basically, I think we should feed mass shooters, admitted mass shooters, into a wood chipper. I think we would have less mass shooters. So, what's up, Counterpoints? Sup, Tones Girl. At Counterpoints, how will mental health checks work if people have the ability to look up the answers to mental health questions like 80 to part 1 of 2? Yeah, I mean, people are obviously going to be able to fake shit, and you're basically dealing with cops and social workers to make judgment calls, but that's already the system we have now, so it's not going to be any worse. How will we be able to stop people from looking up the answer to mental health questions to be able to get a gun? I mean, that's better than what we have now. I don't think that's a problem. And at least they're smart enough to look up the questions. Reagan sucked and Cato libertarians suck. True. So why the fuck should rich people without businesses have more access to protection than poor people without businesses at Anecdote the Based? Garbage. I appreciate your mauled. It's very fun. Counterpoints, cool. I'll just tell my boomer parents-in-law to just die sooner. I'm sure my girlfriend would approve. If it makes you feel any better, I do have boomer parents myself, and I love them both dearly, and they both had serious medical calls in the past couple of years. So I don't actually want my parents to die, but I do think that there needs to be a changing of the guard politically, and some boomers are not going to allow that to happen until they're literally dead. At Counterpoints, yell at the NRA for becoming an anti-safe gun culture and a political activist organization. Yeah. Maybe. They've already lost a lot of power because they were shown to be corrupt. Do you believe there is a concerted effort among the elite to control our education system and distract issues away from it in order to keep the citizens ignorant on subjects like law and political philosophy? Yes. Yes, I do. I think they keep us stupid on purpose because they want us to be factory workers, and we have a 150-year-old education system that hasn't been updated sufficiently. I got reports. Thank you for being based in accessibility, Pilled. You're welcome. Has rising secularism been positive or negative? Both. Both. It's a poison pill. It's going to kill us. But we can fight it and fix it. I'll tell you how another day. As a commie watching your content, you are the only online conservative I could form allegiance with in ongoing American hegemonic decline. Yeah, I mean, like, I really try to be a centrist, but, you know, I hope that I showed some of my conservative bona fides today because I give a shit about this stuff. I'm not just memeing. Counterpoints. What do you think of the Supreme Court ruling voiding the Fourth Amendment if you live within 100 miles of any border? Yeah, I think that's a little fucking cringe. Yeah. I don't know why Border Patrol can do checkpoints like that, unless it's physically at the border, but I don't know. Hey, fuck you, guy. No love for the evil neoliberals in chat, you fucking bastards. Thanks, buddy. At Counterpoints, can we also blame the NSA who didn't flag the shooter's dark-ass music vid that got more than 1 million views? I don't know. I don't know if they do internal shit. At Counterpoints, you streaming tomorrow? Yes, I will be. We'll probably be doing a regular Cloud episode and just having a guest on. And then I will be gone next week just because I'm taking a vacation and my wife literally said, you will take the full vacation. You will not do any YouTube or Twitch streams or anything like that for an entire week. So fuck you. But I'll be editing pre-recorded content and getting it out to y'all. So yeah. Anyways, so there's still 64 people here in the fucking video. Let's go raid somebody. Let's go see if anybody is worth raiding, and you can get in some questions while I'm getting this all set up. I don't raid typically. Yeah, let's go to Tiberius. He's a friend of the channel, and John Zarka is the only other person online that I'm like mutuals with or whatever. So, channel. Just go hang out with Tiberius for a second. He's a geopolitical nerd. He's a fun dude. Some of the time, when he's malding, he's fun. Great channel. Boom, boom. All right. Love you, Twitch fuckers. I hope that you have a beautiful and blessed night. I'm going to talk for like another second. Blah, 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 blah. Link his channel. It's like leader on Twitch. Lead. That's how he spells it. Any thoughts or cares about the Destiny Manifesto? Oh, I'm super fucking excited. I'm crazy excited. Are you fucking kidding me? I can't wait. I love Destiny Vosh. I love Destiny Vosh drama. It's my fucking favorite. What do you think of the Gadsden flag? I think it's based. Wait, didn't Tiberius raid us? Well, he's got like 8 people over there, so I don't know what the fuck he's doing. He's the only other person online. All right, I have no idea what the fuck happened. No fucking way. We raided Tiberius, who raided us, so we just raided back into ourselves. That's fucking hilarious. That's actually really fucking funny. All right, fuck it. All right, I love you guys. I appreciate you. Leave a like or you're a terrible person. So true. Thank you, Nihilist Anonymous, for being the consistent cheerleader for the likes. I do appreciate it. But I love y'all. I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to go play some fucking video games or some shit. And I hope you have a beautiful night. Bye.